Okay.
Got it.
So the our first live with the longest ever title.
It is, isn't it? It's really long.
And it's just badly written as well, isn't it? So two things you think matter for weight loss that don't, and what really matters most to sustainably lose weight.
Awesome.
You can tell I am not a copywriter.
Yet. Yeah, I think it's catchy.
So I mean, let's dive straight in it. Like, I don't know your thoughts on this, Milo, but I have a lot of people who, in the first place, come into me and they we have a conversation, and I often kind of get an idea of like, well, what do you think is the next step? Like, how do you see it as the levers that you need to be pulling? And then I help to try and educate maybe from where they are, where they pick that up from, with arguably what's a little bit more evidence-based and potentially the truth. Do you see a big discrepancy with what people often believe is as the kind of the changer for weight loss versus reality?
Yeah, I think it's one of the questions that I ask people who are wanting to lose fat, and ask them, what things do you think you need to do? And a couple of the things that we're going to talk about are one of those common things. So, and I think the reality of what actually does help you lose weight is very different to, I think, what the perception is up front.
So what's the biggest thing that you see or hear from people about like what people think is what's going to make them lose weight, but actually it's probably not?
I think it's definitely, and a head and shoulders above anything else, is that exercise is going to be the thing which is going to help you lose weight. And yeah, it makes complete sense, doesn't it? Because, you move a little bit more, you're going to burn a little bit more energy, which is going to help you lose weight. But I think one thing that people don't realize is that exercise doesn't, for a lot of people, burn as many calories as you think, or as you even think your bit of technology on your wrist says it does.
I mean, you can't be telling people this, Milo. We run a gym.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. We want people to come in and exercise. Yeah. I completely agree. It's the most common one that I see, that people almost, they have it as the sole focus and often the only component of their weight loss plan. And exercise is important. Like, I'm a big fan of exercise. Like, from everything from, like we'll speak about in a bit, it maintains muscle mass if you do it appropriately. It can also do huge things to you behaviorally in how we self-identify. If we're someone who goes to the gym 3, 4, 5 times a week, we perceive ourselves as a healthy person. And as a byproduct, we might consume better food, we might sleep better, we might hydrate. It's one of these things that we do something that's good for us. We're more likely to be a person who does other good things for us.
Yeah, like he's saying, there's so many benefits to exercise. It's not saying don't exercise, because the one thing which I see with a lot of people who don't exercise and start exercising is in the first week, wow, I have so much energy. And I think there's very few people which haven't said that.
But just don't come into this thinking, exercise is the solution. It's a part of the solution. It's a part of what's going to move you in the right direction. But as soon as we go like, I just need to exercise more, it's incredibly unlikely that is going to yield arguably any weight loss. But if it does in the first instance, definitely not sustainable weight loss. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, definitely not in the long term. Just simple, exercise alone isn't going to be the answer, but it's a part of the puzzle.
But as I often tell people, exercise accounts for maybe 5% of your daily calorie expenditure. Mm-hmm. If you are caning it, and I'm arguing like high intensity across a 2-hour session, it might be 10%, and I don't think it's achievable for most individuals, compared to just how we move in the day, which is around about 30% of our calorie expenditure. So when we look at like actually what that does from a calorie standpoint, it's just not enough. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, simply it's just not a big enough mover to make a difference. And I think that's why you find that those that focus solely on the exercise don't necessarily get the results long term that they want.
Absolutely. So what do you see as the second kind of most common thing that people often might approach with the incorrect modality to weight loss?
I think it's the avoidance of bad food. And I think I think viewing something as good or bad is very simple without taking into account the system that we're putting it in. I'll just give you an example of this. Like for someone who has kidney disease, having a high protein diet might not be good. For someone who has liver disease, alcohol might not be a right idea. And it also comes with things which, let's just bring that back to weight loss. Note the overindulgence of carbs, which many people hold the belief carbs are bad. The overindulgence might not lead to might not be the right thing for weight loss. However, eating carbs in moderation might be.
Yeah, I like to say absolutely nothing is or should be off the table. Because it makes it too reductionist, and it also offers us too much opportunity to, as I often say, be dicks to ourselves. Meaning that, like, if I go and eat a donut, I can go and be a dick to myself and go, "Oh, you silly idiot for eating a donut! How dare you? Like, you're a bad person. You've done a bad thing." And then I'll punish myself potentially with more donuts, and it spirals out a little bit. As soon as we vilify food, especially for the sake of weight loss, we've suddenly made our ability to be flexible and adaptable in this situation far lower. When the truth is, it's not so much, and we'll talk about it in a bit, but like, it's not so much the quality of the food when we're talking about weight loss. The most important thing is the quantity of the food, specifically calories. If we're consuming few enough calories to maintain a calorie deficit, i.e. we're burning more than we consume, we will lose weight, whether that's the Twinkie diet that you referenced before we got on this phone call, or whether it's eating, chicken, broccoli, and rice. One way or another, if your calories are equal, you're probably going to lose a similar amount of body fat.
Yeah, I think there's, what you're saying is there, that there's space in your diet based on what your goals are for you to have a donut a day, for you to have a Kit Kat a day, for you to have pasta every single day. As you said, it's that moderation. Like, having, I don't know, let's just pick a figure, 20 donuts a day might make it very hard for you to lose weight. However, it is possible to just eat donuts and lose weight. I'm not going to say you won't feel pretty shit the whole time you're trying to do it, but it's completely possible because there's lots of studies which, as you said, the Twinkie, the potato diet, various other things where they just eat solely that, where you can get weight loss.
100%. And that's the thing, and all of this, like, it's such a nuanced discussion, right? And we don't want to bore the hell out of people, but the truth is, whatever you consume, if you eat few enough calories, you will lose weight. Now, that doesn't mean that, if you do eat your calorie deficit at McDonald's, you are going to feel like shit. Like, your digestion is going to be horrible. Your energy is going to be awful. Arguably, your sleep's probably going to be bad. Like, everything is going to be pretty pants. We should probably consume, at least the basis of our meals, some quality proteins, some vegetables, things that are going to kind of shore us up from a health perspective and just make us feel energetic and vital. But we can't then demonize a particular food, like you said, whether it be a Kit Kat or a donut or, a fast food meal here or there, because if we do demonize that, we become so inflexible and so non-adaptable that it really does become a discussion of on or off the wagon. It's not something that we can kind of ebb and flow based on, where we are in the phase of our life. It's either, well, I'm eating perfectly, or I'm, balls to the wall eating crap right now.
Yeah. So important thing is don't obsess over eating too much of a singular thing.
Yeah, 100%. So, I mean, those are the two big ones. Is there anything that you would add to that? They're the ones that I see most commonly.
Let me have a think. The top of my head. No, I think those are the big ones which are covered there on that front. Yeah.
So more importantly, let's go into, again, we've alluded to some of them, but like the things that actually matter in this discussion, right?
Yeah.
So I think one that we've hit so far, and we keep hitting again and again, is the sustainable calorie deficit, right? So what do we mean by that?
So it's being in an energy. So basically, think in it very loosely. If you're eating the same amount of energy as you're burning, you're going to stay the same weight. So you need to be eating a little bit less energy than you burn on a day. That's the right way around, yeah? Eating less energy than you burn on a day to be in a deficit to help you lose fat. And I think, being honest, that is the one thing which will make you lose weight. Because if you're not in a sustainable calorie deficit, you won't.
And I think like it's a tiny little aspect to this sentence, but a sustainable calorie deficit, there's intricacies inside of that, right? So we don't want to have too aggressive a deficit, because again, we want to do this in such a way where we're not starving, or we're in a position where we're kind of constantly abstaining to then inevitably swing back into some form of binge behavior. And the other intricacies inside of that, like trying to maintain a calorie deficit with higher protein, higher fiber and vegetable.
Come on, daddy.
Because then if we've got those things that are high satiating foods, meaning foods that make us feel fuller, it makes that deficit more sustainable. We feel less uncomfortable through the whole process. We feel more energized. We just feel better through the whole process, and therefore it's more sustainable to maintain that deficit, right?
Yeah, like again, if you go back to trying to have a sustainable calorie deficit on Twinkies, it's going to be incredibly hard, just because I haven't tried it, but I imagine you'll be feeling hungry all the time. Whereas if you're filling up on quality protein and vegetables, you're going to be feeling a lot more satiated, and the hunger isn't going to be there, which makes you eat more.
I mean, can you imagine how shattered you would feel at multiple points in the day if you like did your 2,000, 3,000 calories through exclusively Mars bars?
I might try it and find out. I don't want to imagine it. The Mars bars.
I mean, bar the additional dental bills you'd have to incur, but just that sheer like roller coaster ride, like, oh, I'm so energetic. Oh, I need to nap right now, and just again and again throughout the day.
I reckon it'd probably be more expensive eating Mars bars than your current diet as well. Yeah.
I think you could argue that. This is research that we have to do.
Yeah, we have to do it. Anyway, that's besides the point. Let's go.
So maintaining a healthy calorie deficit. And again, for me on this one, talking about exercise, one of the biggest things for me that is so vital, especially in the long game of weight loss, is maintaining muscle mass. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, like if you think of it in terms of, if you've got your long-term health in mind, like maintaining muscle mass is so important, because you're basically helping yourself out in 20, 30 years, because the lower muscle mass you have as you age, pretty much loosely is the less function you will have when you're 70 or 80.
And like it's also been connected to a whole host of like metabolic disorders. Like essentially, the more muscle mass you seem to have, the healthier you arguably are. But I think the other thing in this is that anyone that you've seen go through a long weight loss journey that hasn't in any way focused on muscle mass maintenance, it is so difficult to then maintain that new body weight, because you've lost so much tissue, which is arguably so much more metabolically active compared to fat tissue, meaning that muscle tissue basically burns more calories in just existing than fat tissue does. When we've lost that in the weight loss journey, suddenly we went from being able to maintain a healthy body weight at, let's say, I'm pulling numbers out my bum here, 1,700 calories per day. And because you've lost all of that muscle mass, we're now on like 1,200 calories per day. And our ability to, again, sustain that for the future, 1,200 is very different than 1,700 calories.
Yeah, like I think, you're basically voicing the fact that like trying to losing weight without resistance training is a little bit unethical. It's possible, but not like if someone came to me and say, I want to lose weight, I'm not interested in doing resistance training, I would have that conversation, because I think it would be something that I might actually find hard to allow somebody to do just based on how health grounds.
Yeah, 100%. Not to mention, like it's a bit of a scam in a little way, because arguably you could lose more weight quickly if you sacrifice muscle mass, right? Like if we really calorie the hell out of the situation, don't really prioritize protein and go for an extreme calorie deficit, you can eat away at your tissues pretty nicely. And for the sake of, again, very exclusively, careful with my language here, weight loss, great. But when we look at like actually what you're doing to change your body fat percentage or your body composition, it's not only is it crap, it's also completely unsustainable.
Yeah, definitely. In a nutshell.
So sustainable calorie deficit, maintaining of muscle mass. And I think something that you and I will hit on, so I'll just keep banging on about it, because I really believe this is the long-term game in this, is flexibility and adaptability. Like, where are you at with that at the moment?
It's pretty important. Like I think, just understanding that we can't control everything in our life, and as such, we need to be able to have the knowledge and the ability just to be a little bit more flexible. Like, just put the example, you go on holiday for 4 weeks, and you don't have access to a gym, you're going to have to find some way of getting some activity in, perhaps, if that's what you want. Again, if you're away with work for a week and you don't have the confines of your own kitchen, you're going to have to find a way to be a little bit flexible out of your routine to be able to carry on with your goals.
And those are big changes, right? Even I've seen even smaller ones really affect people when it's like they just get a new job and they're working an hour later than they usually do. And it just means that all their previous strategies have gone out the window. And if they're not adaptable and flexible enough, they can't suddenly go, okay, well, let's figure out new strategies. It becomes the off the wagon type situation where like, well, those strategies don't work anymore. I'm just going to do whatever happens. And so, well, actually, if you were able to be a little bit more adaptable, you know, what I had previously, what does work, what doesn't work, what can I continue to implement? And then what can I adjust, adapt, or change to fit this new situation? Buying food at different places, potentially meal prepping, you know, there's 100 options in there. But just by showing that adaptability to arguably a very small change in the day can be the difference between you gaining weight over the next 12 months versus you maintaining or continuing to lose.
Yeah, let's just, you know, let's say you do your food shopping on a Sunday, something comes up or you're away for the weekend, and as such your food shopping doesn't happen on a Sunday, which means you've got to go to work on Monday and Tuesday and you don't have things available to cook, you know, cook food yourself, and you don't end up going to the shop until Thursday. That's suddenly 4 days of that week where, just because of the inflexibility of having another plan or some sort of backup plan on Monday or Tuesday to find half an hour to go to the shops, suddenly it may feel like to the person it's derailed that week.
Any system or strategy that we have that isn't flexible is inherently fragile. Like if we can't, as simple as that, if we can't change our shopping day and that ruins the following week, that isn't a good enough system. I'm not on board with it. And I don't think you should be either. Like, don't get me wrong, like early days, have something that's rigid and practice flexibility. But we need to recognize that, like, just because we can't shop on a Sunday because something comes up doesn't mean that the whole week should be messed up. There's other directions that we can go to, you know, still have 70, 80, even 90% efficacy or efficiency during that period of time rather than zero.
The freezer, having quality food in your freezer. So when you do have this moment come up, you don't have that, oh God, solutions. There we go.
That's not what we're here for, Milo. I mean, I've got a freezer full of frozen raw dog food, so maybe that's my worst case scenario.
Yeah. Can we see that next week?
Yeah, maybe it's just a combination of muscle meat, which I think will be fine, but then bone and offal, which I'm not 100% sure on whether I not want to consume that.
Okay.
You're down, are you?
I'm lucky we do this on Zoom. So I don't get to do the taste testing. But anyway,
I'll bring that when we do our barbecue next. I'll bring that around. Okay. Some dog meat burgers. Anywho, so yeah, I think main ones on that again: sustainable calorie deficit, being not vilifying particular foods, just making sure we can consume less calories than we need to maintain body weight if we're trying to lose weight, and do it in a way that is sustainable for the long term. Do something, whether that be through, you know, maintenance of protein or resistance training to maintain muscle mass while losing weight, because it really sets us up for our ability to maintain our new weight. And doing practices and doing things and just trying to be more adaptable and flexible in all of this. Because again, if we don't practice that and we don't refine that skill, we are setting ourselves up to be fragile and more likely to come back to our starting place. Yeah. Anything you want to add to that, Milo?
I think just one other thing, and again, it kind of links in with sustainability. It's just consistency. It's like, you don't need to be perfect at everything. You don't need to have the perfect calorie deficit. You don't need to have the perfect exercise plan. It's just about doing that consistently for a long period of time.
A little more often.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm happy if you are.
Yeah, all good.
Awesome. Thank you, Milo. I'll speak to you next week.
Yeah, we'll do. See you next week all.
Later.